Hello, Cinemotion.
Aaron, what attracted you to Steve Jobs' personality?
Steve Jobs' personality did not attract me. It was an obstacle to be gotten over. He struck me as unpleasant. I've never met the man, by the way. I've only read about the man and talked to other people who knew him very well. And the real problem that I had, being myself the father of a young daughter, was the way in which he treated his daughter. That I thought, I don't care if he comes up with a cure for cancer. It's going to be hard for me to get past that. But it was his daughter, actually, who helped me get past that. She's a wonderful, wonderful woman. And she would tell me stories that weren't necessarily the most flattering stories about him. But then she would kind of turn it and say, but you can see how he really loved me. But you can see the goodness inside of him. So what I didn't want to do was what we call a biopic in the U.S. It's short for biographical picture. That has a structure that's familiar and hard to shake. It's cradle to grave, and then he did this, and then he did that, and then he did this, and then he did that, and then he went to the doctor, and then he died. I didn't want to do that, nor did I want to do a movie that was an invention movie or an origin story that said this guy is the greatest guy. Let's give him a round of applause every time he steals someone else's idea and makes it his own. That I wanted to dive right into the dark part of Steve and see if I can get to like him by the end of the movie. Maybe the audience will too.
I definitely like him much more.
Good. Good.
Only by the young.
We need to be rooting for him to be the better part of himself. We need to see glimpses of the better part of himself. Like, for instance, in the first act when Lisa does the painting on the Mac, and he has the same reaction to it that any parent would have if their 5-year-old made a drawing with crayons, brought it home from school. You'd go crazy over this thing and you'd tape it to the wall. And when we see him have that reaction, we can suddenly relate to that and say, Steve, be that Steve. That's a good Steve. And just because you're being that doesn't mean you won't invent the iPhone. Being a nice guy it's not binary the way Wozniak says. So it was others that helped me get in there. As I said, I didn't do the typical biopic structure. I chose something else, something more play-like, where something that took place in claustrophobic spaces, compressed periods of time with a ticking clock.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to ask. Was it any risk?
A big risk. That's so big a risk, in fact, that ordinarily, when I agree to do a movie, I don't audition the idea for the studio. I don't tell the studio, here's how I'm going to do it. I'm hired, and I go away for a year, and I turn in a script. This was going to be so different from what I imagined they were expecting from me that this time I did go to the studio and say, this is what my plan is. They were incredibly supportive of that, in fact. They didn't give me any pushback. They said, do that. It would take, to do it this way, to have the entire movie just be 3 scenes, each of which took place in real time, which is to say 30 minutes for you is the same as 30 minutes for a character on the screen. And that it would all take place backstage, in corridors and rooms backstage, in the moments before one of his product launches. To do that, it was going to take a director with the visual genius of Danny Boyle, and it was going to take a world-class cast of actors.
Were you involved in it? Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh, okay.